Good afternoon. So most of you might have obviously basic understanding of public administration, right? The course that we have designed has some very typical aspects. So today we'll not be getting into technical study, right? But I will help you at least understand how since 2016 the nature of question paper has changed. Now when you think of optional marks, obviously there are certain areas which are very strong for any student, right? So let us say, if I want to simplify that in public administration, out of these two papers, which of the areas do you think you can score more? And has it actually happened or not? Which of these areas do you think you can score more marks?
I guess paper one, but still I have scored less in that paper.
Obviously, this is not something a fixed idea, first of all. Fine. But definitely there will be a paper where your command of the subject would be much better than the other paper. Okay, there are two factors which create this command. So if you think of scoring pattern, let's say, if I take this year, a lot of students who have qualified, some who've got 292, 293 marks. So most of the pattern that I've observed is 160, 132, 135. Right? Somebody getting 285, 287. Uska bhi almost aise hi hai, 150, 136. Right? One student getting less than 250. So uska 120, 120, almost same marks in both the papers. Okay. अब ये एक general pattern है. I'm not saying that everybody will be scoring the same way. But when we see out of 39 who qualified, now see 530 students appeared in the mains. Out of that, 39 students qualified. तो 14-15 हमारे भी पढ़ाए हुए थे, right? I would not boast कि सारे थे, but 50% के almost हमारे भी थे, right? Somewhere obviously who did not qualify, but still they got good marks, right? There are few students who scored very good marks, but they have not qualified for the interview, right? Or gave interview, could not qualify. Most of them have a pattern that in paper one their score is relatively better than paper two, right? That is a general pattern. So majority of them have more or 10, 15, 20 marks more than paper two. Could there be a reason for that? What could be the reason for that? नहीं, पेपर वन तो अमेरिकन पर्सपेक्टिव से लिखा गया है, तो उसकी अवेलेबिलिटी इंडिया में ज्यादा है, और पेपर टू इंडियन पर्सपेक्टिव से लिखा गया, उसकी अवेलेबिलिटी कम है. ओरिएंटेशन, right? The way you approach paper one. Why? Because paper one is mostly alien. When you start reading it, you are more conscious of reading paper one. You become less conscious of paper two, because you think that you get a lot of content from paper two, polity and governance, or paper four, ethics, or in general, you know a lot of things in paper two. So this basic approach or orientation of assuming that you know a lot of things, that itself is the first barrier. So कहीं ना कहीं आप क्या करते हैं? You mediocreize the answer already, because you think कि हाँ, अरे president's rule आएगा, ठीक है, हाँ यही तो लिखना है. GS, see, yes, to an extent you can say that, but see, the logic is the basic concept will not change whether it is GS or PubAd. अगर पूछा जाए what are administrative values in governance, and पूछा जाए what are administrative values in ethics paper, will they change? They will not change. That is fine, but there are a lot of topics in which you cannot connect from paper one. Lot of topics. You are talking about Pura program in paper two, or urban mission in paper two, rural development, for example, right?
Basically, the context of the question we have to understand before I give the answer.
I will come to that. See, this year's session is आज. So you have one aspect that there is a trend that generally in paper one people tend to score better. So one important factor is they are conscious of that paper. They are conscious of that vocabulary because they give importance to it, because probably they have not heard it before. So even you don't know, right? Non-deliberately itself you understand that, okay, yes, paper one I have to be more conscious what term I have to write, what vocabulary I have to use, right? What does it mean? So effort डालते हो थोड़ा सा समझने के लिए. So somewhere naturally you develop a good tendency of writing it, right? Second aspect, paper one is based purely on conceptual understanding. You can write basic facts, which is available in the textbook, right? Rest of the things is your creativity. You have to somewhere use that creativity, or I would say analysis. Creativity should not be beyond the logic, fine, but your analysis is demanded in paper 1. So now see, the people who are accustomed to do better analysis, like linkage, किसी ने बोला, ठीक है, तो linkage क्या है? जो Indian context में whatever is happening, you are trying to portray that in paper 2, paper 1, and justifying the theory which you are writing. Now this solely depends upon the level of your understanding. If you are able to use a better example, a better logic than someone, right, your chances of scoring increases many times. क्योंकि concept आपने समझा है और example आप use कर रहे हो, ठीक है? Now see people how they write example. So they will write a theory and they will just use that example. For example, in Indian context, this happened. No, this is not the way we write the answer. So if you're understanding the concept and then you want to integrate paper 2, how do you do it? You identify the principle. You try to evaluate the principle related to which you will write the example. कहीं ना कहीं वो principle दिखना चाहिए उस example में. Are you getting? You are simply talking about bureaucracy and you are using any example and saying, see, Indian bureaucracy is like that. What aspect of bureaucracy I am trying to highlight through the example? मैं neutrality को highlight कर रहा हूँ, apolitical nature को highlight कर रहा हूँ, corruption को highlight, क्या मैं highlight? What I am highlighting? ये भी बहुत important है. So see, there are many students who are able to understand this difference. That what aspect of Taylor I am talking about, what aspect of Weber I am talking about, how I am using Forte for community development programs in paper 2, right? Or with Forte, what kind of example I am using from Indian context. So which aspect of Forte I am trying to support, right? That is very important. So बहुत सारे लोग बोलते paper 2 link किया, but वो बहुत generalized linkage है. That is a very average linkage. That's not a proper linkage. But ठीक है. So ये trend है. If I take this simply as one logic, then I would say that paper 1 is, or its potential of scoring is higher, right? So potential score of this is much higher. And why I'm saying that? Because with little less effort here, you can score more. Because topics are not that diverse as they are here. यहाँ पे topics बहुत diverse है, right? So potential of scoring is higher here. Potential of scoring here is average. There's a logic also. Most of these students, they feel comfortable here. I understand they might not have that content, but they feel comfortable attempting this part. Because in general, whatever questions are asked, they understand the domain of those questions. Polity आएगा, constitutional values आएगा, evolution of Indian administration आएगा, see? So more or less, they have a very general understanding of all these topics. Fine? But imagine, यहाँ पे they ask neo-Weberian state, right? Or they ask administrative state. Now, in general, a student would have interpreted this term in one dimension, right? But this term has multiple dimensions. So see, logic is that generally people feel comfortable here. So your competition in this paper is higher. In this paper, the competition is much less. क्यों? क्योंकि इतना conceptual understanding सबकी नहीं हो सकती. Unless you have invested time in this paper. So with little better conceptual orientation, you can score better marks here. Let's say average people are scoring 120, 130. But with a good understanding, you can score 160. That is 30 marks. कोई आपसे बहुत extraordinary होगा, तो भी वो 15, 20 marks से ज़्यादा यहाँ पे नहीं ला सकता आपसे. Because you're studying the same thing in polity, governance, ethics, and many places. So everybody is having some average understanding of this paper, right? I'm just talking about strategy. That how I can increase my score. It doesn't mean this is not important. This is equally important. But chances of increasing the score here is more compared to here. Because current perspectives will be asked. So current perspectives sometimes may be very typical. And you might also not be able to answer it. ऐसा हो सकता है, fine. But यहाँ पे even if your concept is known, then there are many types of questions which people may not understand, but you will be able to write. Why? Because you know the concept. This paper is more open-ended. This is more fixed. Understanding? So if they ask, 15th Finance Commission has improved fiscal federalism in India. So obviously you have to write the facts given by the 15th Finance Commission. तो ऐसा हो सकता है कि आपको कोई fact याद ना हो. See? So chances here are more, here less. Fine. But obviously scoring can be done here also. But today our focus is this. So when you see the potential of paper 1 seems to be better. Fine. Paper 1 has 3 important aspects. We'll talk about क्या top topics हैं यहाँ पे, ठीक है? So 3 aspects are there. बहुत simple है, see. सबसे important जो है paper 1 में वो है concept. Because it is a theoretical paper, obviously we cannot be too theoretical, but still it is a theoretical paper, so concept or conceptual clarity is very important. Every topic right? Theory, evolution, every topic has some basic concepts. Right? I'm not saying that there are too diverse, but there are some common underlying principles which govern every topic. Right? So ये सबसे important है. दूसरा aspect क्या है? Facts. Right? People miss this also. You might think I know Taylor. Fine, but many of you will not know Taylor if I start asking you. Right? How can you integrate Taylor with Wilson? So Taylor और Wilson को integrate करने के लिए पहले concept चाहिए, but लिखने के लिए facts चाहिए. Right? So concept, fact, a third aspect है internet. Now many of the things in paper 1, they are not defined properly. They are not elaborated properly, but questions are asked in the examination. So there was a question on the later development of public choice approach. I hope all of you know that. So later development of public choice approach, which was supported by Denhart and Denhart. Denhart and Denhart have talked about the concept of new public service. See how conceptually things are different. Now I have asked so many students, ठीक है, इतने बच्चों को पढ़ा लिया, बहुत सारे ने बहुत अच्छे मार्क्स भी लाए. But see, when you ask them, how do you distinguish between NPM and PCA? They will say the same thing: privatization, market reform, basic funda तो यही है sir. So, but why we have used the word public choice approach then? Why can't we say PCA is NPM? Right? Now see, public choice approach is a theory of state, and NPM is a model of administrative reform. These are two different things. It's like saying that PCA is like democracy, whereas NPM is bureaucracy. एक major conceptual difference है.
Basically, we are reforming in NPM, the traditional public administration, and PCA we are giving the new market approach.
You are in PCA, you are changing the ideology of viewing the government. In NPM, you are bringing technical changes only. Understanding this? So when you change your viewpoint altogether, that is PCA. Right? To support that viewpoint, when you bring some changes, technical changes, that is NPM. So see, ये conceptual difference है. So when the question will be asked, it will be based on this logic that, okay, fine, public choice approach is better to be called an approach than a theory. ये question आ चुका है UPSC में. Right? So public choice approach is better to be called as approach than theory. It is based on the same logic. Why it is an approach? Because it is ideological. कोई concrete recommendation नहीं है उसके अंदर, right? It's more about perceiving the government in a different form. They are not denying the role of government, right? But they are saying our existing or traditional viewpoint about the government must change. Right? There's a marriage. So institution of marriage has changed. Same, the institution of state or political system should change. Right? So when you will bring this political transformation, the administrative change will automatically happen. That is what NPM is. Right? So you can imagine traditional administration cannot exist in a new form of political ideology. That is the difference. So बहुत सारे इसमें ऐसे logic है, right? Obviously we cannot know each and everything, but at least we can simplify these concepts. So see, drawback is that most of us think that there are a lot of things which are same. So ये सबसे पहला drawback है. Because when you see 10-mark questions now, if you see the makeup of the entire paper 1, these two sections, right? Section A or part 1 and section B. Now 2014-15 तक क्या होता था? We could predict this section. कि भाई part A में ये questions इस topic से आएंगे. ठीक है, easy था. It was easy. Because we knew कि भाई Simon यहाँ पे नहीं पूछा जाएगा. Right? Administrative law will not be here. Administrative law यहाँ आएगा. Right? Or personal administration would be more dominant here, less here. Right? But 2017 onwards, if you see the question paper, क्या हुआ? Now they are repeatedly asking which was supposed to be here. They are asking it here. क्या reason होगा? Have they forgotten the syllabus? They don't care about syllabus now. Why are they asking it? क्योंकि कोई simple logic तो होगा. कोई reason वैसा हो सकता. Concrete reason. See, concrete reason is there. They don't want you to study in isolation from each other. Even if they have given the topics, they want you to have an interrelated understanding. So if you talk about Wilson's concept of science of administration, right? Yeah, dichotomy. You cannot dissociate the idea of dichotomy with administrative reforms, right? The logic of dichotomy with respect to civil services reforms in India. तो वो ये नहीं चाहते कि आप पढ़ो अलग अलग, राइट, बट सोचो मत अलग अलग. ये बहुत बड़ा डिफरेंस है. So 14-15 तक जो पेपर्स होते थे, they were to an extent predictable except 12 and 13. In 12 and 13, obviously, they have experimented with the syllabus in a very drastic way. Because Ahmedabad was involved in making the papers to an extent. So 15 or 17, 14, 15, 16, you'll find that they started changing this trend. They started going for less mark questions, 10 marks, 15 marks, 20 marks, 30 marks, right? पहले 60 marks होता था, right? या 30 into 2 dominantly होता था. But now they will start experimenting with 10, 15, 20, 30, right? By this, what they can do, they can cover most of the topics in the syllabus. If they have to ask 60 mark question, they will not be able to cover most of the topics. And even if they cover, the student will have a lot of choice. See, तो उन्होंने क्या किया? ये possibility है that in the 5 out of 8 questions, which you might leave some of the questions, and probably you'll never need to study those topics ever. For example, techniques of administrative improvement. Easy है, but ठीक है, boring है. ठीक है, आपने बोला नहीं पढ़ना, छोड़ो. Optional question आएगा, I will leave it. Now see what they're doing? यहाँ पे they are doing. Because it is compulsory, now you cannot leave it. Okay? So even if there is, because they have asked questions like Dicey's view or criticism of rule of law in 10 marks. So see, they are now in the trend of asking bigger questions or which have lot of content in small questions or in lesser marks. Okay. So this also means that somewhere our approach to the study of certain topics, right, should be more precise, more pinpointed. At least we must know what are these 5 main points to be written. Right? So see, try to understand a subjective type question in an objective or subjective type answer in an objective type question. So they are asking these kind of questions. But obviously it doesn't mean it is tough, right? It seems to be tough, but it is not. See, now, if I take, अब ये एक बहुत important trend है, right? If you see 30 marks or 20 marks question. So earlier, let's say you had to write somewhere 350 words. Okay, now that is not the scenario. There is space. अब space में जितना आप लिख सकते हो, लिख लो. They'll get the word limit, but space is the constant. Time is the constant. What does it mean? See, when you're approaching this question or this question, you should have some ready-made logic in your mind. Then only you can write in that time frame. Because number of questions बहुत ज़्यादा हो गए. The lesser the mark, the more number of questions they can ask, and time will be taken will be almost same. क्यों? क्योंकि सोचना तो पड़ेगा ना. अगर आपको लगा मुझे 10 marks लिखने हैं, अरे मैं लिख दूंगा. But आपको सोचना तो पड़ेगा ना, क्योंकि 10 markers have become complicated. So overall time that you write in the exam is not increasing. You cannot have liberty of having what you can say spare time to look at the question. You don't have. When it was 60 marks, right, or just 30 marks, it was easy for us to spare 10 minutes and see the question. Abhi nahi hai. So kitne diverse topics hain. So see, in the 10 marker, they are asking conceptual question. It will take time for you to think about it and write it. Okay, that time will be the time which you would have given to 30 marks. But आप उसमें से भी थोड़ा सा time spare करके 10 markers को लिखोगे. क्यों? Because you can get more marks there. It's easy to score 6 or 5 out of 10 than 20 out of 30. It's very difficult to score that. क्योंकि एक एग्जामिनर जो है ना, उसका माइंडसेट क्या है कि 30 मार्क्स में कोई बहुत अच्छा भी लिखेगा तो क्या लिखेगा, 15, 16, 17 मार्क्स, हाँ ठीक है, बहुत अच्छा. See, but उसको 10 मार्क्स में देने में प्रॉब्लम नहीं होगी. Why? Because it's more objective in nature. So he will evaluate in that framework that in 10 marks this person has given the important points, such a fine. ठीक है. But जैसे ही 30 मार्क्स या 20 मार्क्स होगा, सब्जेक्टिविटी बढ़ जाएगी. So he might have a frame of answer in his mind. Yeah, he might be having that answer sheet, right, which he'll use to evaluate, and that will have maybe have a different orientation than what you have written. So many times this brings subjectivity. Scaling to high, that is a different aspect. But in general, so when you're writing a lot of long answers, you probably fail to impress the examiner. In short answers, you can impress him instantly. ये भी drawback है कि if we are writing too much, we might fail to focus on the core aspect. Right? So scoring, that means I'm just trying to simplify that there is a strategy. So we should follow these simple steps. अगर हमें स्कोर लाना है, obviously हमें रिसर्चर तो बनना नहीं है, right? लेकिन स्कोर लाना है, so at least mindset जो एग्जामिनर का है वो समझना जरूरी है, right? So paper 1 now, let us start with certain things. So if we have to identify today, right, the priority topics, right, or you can use the word trending today. Today's vocabulary you can use trending in PubAd. So what are the core topics or priority topics which have been frequently asked? So 5-6 years, starting 2017, we have seen all the question papers, and then we arrived at certain list, right, and their dimensions. You see, so 2016 तक जो theories का part है, that is your unit 2. Theories of organization, that was very dominant. Right? 10, 11, 12, lot of questions. Almost 30-40% of the paper was coming from one unit. Right? But now this has changed. See, 2019, 21, both the years you see the question paper, dominantly, जो सबसे important topic है पूरे paper 1 में, right? That is introduction. This is the most important part, introduction. Right? In fact, 2021, if you had studied introduction only properly, you could have answered a lot of questions. If you have given, you'll understand that. Now, in introduction part, there are certain things which they are focusing. Okay, continuously they are focusing. Okay. You know, obviously, introduction part. अब इसमें जो कुछ सब टॉपिक्स हैं जो लगातार every year they are asking in some form or the other. ठीक है, दो dominant things, सबसे basic but still complicated. Nature and scope. Dominantly they are asking this topic. One form, another form, one form, another form. एक definition, दूसरा definition, right? Some form or the other they are asking. Nature and scope of public administration. Now, within this topic, you can include many other aspects, right? When they are asking nature, then they can further diversify or break this topic into Western and non-Western. See? And it's not just paper 1, they're asking paper 2 also. Right? The emerging trends in Indian administration. Right? The nature of reforms in Indian administration. ये कहाँ से आ रहा है सब? It is about understanding the non-Western nature of public administration. So if you are conceptually understanding this topic, nature in 2 dimensions, Western and non-Western, you can take a lot of questions here. Okay, let's take an example for this. Now, in the Western tradition, what is the basic premise of Western tradition or the Western dominated study of public administration? Correct, right? Okay, and
Principles.
So when you are using the word dichotomy, it itself is based on the idea that there must be science of administration. So the underlying principle of Western study is positivism. You understand this term, positivism?
What confusion in this term?
Why there is confusion? Positivism kya? If we simplify it and say that we try to make the study of a subject, right, enriched with logic and facts. And somewhere we want to make it more predictable. Ye bhi ek logical. So positivism is inspired from social sciences, sociology, in public administration. In general, inspired from natural sciences in social sciences. तो positivism क्या करता है? वो एक absolute meaning देता है. To whatever content and vocabulary you use in a subject, it gives it an absolute meaning. Okay? So when we say rationality, अब उसका एक absolute meaning होगा. Rationality का मतलब क्या है? अच्छा, find something which is based on reason, logic, and leads to efficiency. Fixed meaning, right? So positivism comes with the idea that things are fixed, things are logical. अब उस पर भी हम आएंगे. See, पहले facts आप नहीं बोल सकते, but you can simply say yes, that it is based on scientific, logical understanding. So positivism is the underlying principle of the Western studies. अब India में, I'll come back to this, right? But let us say, when we talk about Kautilya, Mughal administration, many of the developing countries study what was the focus? The primary focus was how welfare can be achieved. I'm not saying that they were not concerned with welfare, but हमारा जो literature है, our study was dominantly focused on welfare, justice, equality. भाई हमारी problems यही हैं, right? Our problems are very distinct from them. So see, so if I understand the nature of public administration and then I focus on this aspect of study, I will be more concerned with the study of theories and principles.
So, even investors had already behavioral science.
Yes, definitely, but not. Yes, but not initially. Yes. Yoga or the role of the state as a guardian, right? As a moral conscience keeper. So we generally treated state in that regard, right? Whereas here the impact of industrial revolution, scientific development, it treated state more disconnected from the personal lives of people. That is why this notion emerged, that the primary focus of the study should be scientific understanding. Why scientific understanding? Because they did not deny welfare, but for them, welfare was not a humanitarian concept, or you can say it was not the emotional aspect of what we treat as welfare. Right? So they did not have that kind of social structure in their society. So the idea that dominant study of public administration from the rational scientific perspective, right? It was not non-scientific, right? But it was more human-oriented. Try to understand. It was more client-oriented. Wilson himself was in the favor of a business type of administration. Right? So that is what I'm saying. Here we did not talk much about it, right? So nature, let's say for example, we can diversify this topic, right? When you think of Western tradition, अब यहाँ भी nature पढ़ा गया. So here, when we are studying the nature of public administration, right? So two again dominant perspectives emerge. अब questions इसमें भी आते हैं कि PubAd is instrument or PubAd is institution. Wilson ने क्या पढ़ा? PubAd is instrument or PubAd is institution? Then why did he say dichotomy if it was instrument? What was the need to compare the administration with political system? It was just a means of the political system to achieve certain ends. He basically created a competition between politics and administration. Right? He believed that it was an instrument and it should be converted into institution. तभी तो उसने criticism किया कि what is civil services? It's like puppet in the hands of the state. Political system, right? How do we understand this logic? That he refers to the idea of multitudinous monarch. So Wilson uses the term multitudinous monarch for what? इसलिए किया भाई? अरे इतना सीरियस, इतना स्ट्रेस लेके मेंस लिखोगे क्या? रिलैक्स करो यार, सारे बच्चे आप ही की तरह हैं. मल्टीट्यूडनस मोनार्क नहीं सुना ना? सुना है कहीं?
जैसे यूरोप में मोनार्की में डेमोक्रेसी बोल सकते हैं.
करेक्ट. सो व्हाट इज द टर्म यूज्ड फॉर? इट इज यूज्ड फॉर डेमोक्रेसी. विल्सन बोलता है डेमोक्रेसी, राइट, इज अ बिग प्रॉब्लम बिकॉज डेमोक्रेसी हैज पब्लिक, राइट, पब्लिक ओपिनियन. This public opinion he calls as multitudinous monarch. So Wilson treats public administration as instrument, or he believes that it has been treated as an instrument. Now the time has come to make it as institution. That is why he talks about separate study of administration. Obviously, he is not that stupid. He realizes his mistake. ठीक है, तो इसलिए 1893, when he talks about his, or when his essay is discovered, to the study of administration, when this is discovered in 1930s, right? By the time Goodenough had become the father of American public administration, so they had no title what to do. So they said, okay, Goodenough is father of American PubAd, but this is the person who has studied it before Goodenough, what to do? So call him as father. Sorry, Goodenough जो है father of American PubAd हो गया था. So they said कि भाई इससे भी कुछ ऊपर है, हाँ, father of PubAd, Wilson. because it is not the correct title that Wilson should get. A lot of debates are there around it. Fine, but okay. We are not much concerned with that. So he wrote this essay, and this essay was discovered very late, right? But in 1893, another monograph. You understand what is a monograph? ठीक है, अगर आप ये अज्यूम करो कि एक पैराग्राफ लिखा गया, राइट? उस पैराग्राफ में डोमिनेंटली एक आइडिया लिखा गया. जनरली राइट एन एसे, राइट मल्टीपल पैराग्राफ्स एंड यू पुट मल्टीपल आइडियाज इन दोस पैराग्राफ्स. तो आप ये अज्यूम करो कि एक ऐसा एसे जिसमें एक ही पैराग्राफ है और एक ही आइडिया है, मोनोग्राफ. तो विल्सन ने एक मोनोग्राफ लिखा in 1893 and he discarded his own view. So we say he retreated from the dichotomy. But when you understand his view, there are doubts. So when we understand his logic in between this, so he was trying to say that can we make public administration in American context or democratic context as strong as it was in France and Germany. इसलिए उसने उसको इंस्टीट्यूशन की तरह देखा कि can we have that, right? But he realized later that no, right? Eventually public administration is part of political system. So he retreated from this side, right? So ये दो perspectives भी आते हैं in the nature of PubAd, that it is an institution or an instrument. But commonly accepted belief is that it is an instrument. क्योंकि विल्सन भी रिट्रीट हो गया था अपने आइडिया से, right? Later on, many of the scholars who come, even Waldo was a big supporter of democracy, L.D. White, right? And Paul Appleby, Big Democracy, जिसने किताब लिखी, very famous. So all these people, when we study them, we also arrive at the same logic that public administration is not an institution, it is an instrument. So that is a common link. So ये भी एक nature है कि भाई what it is. Then people, scholars like Appleby's name you've heard. What is he famous for? Paul Appleby reforms. He was famous for Indian Institute of Public Administration, establishing IIPA and ONM, Indian Institute of PubAd and ONM, which was also recommended by other committees, no doubt. But he was the one who established this ONM in India to a large extent. So, Paul Appleby has written a famous book, Big Democracy. Big Democracy. बहुत popular book है. What is the reference of this term, big democracy? Right? Now see how UPSC manipulates. That is why students say out of syllabus, but out of syllabus नहीं होता है. It is somewhere very subsidiary part of the content that you study. So see how UPSC makes the question. Big democracy requires reinventing government today. अब ये क्वेश्चन बन गया 10 मार्क्स में. ठीक है, दो ऐसे टर्म्स आ गए, एक आपको पता है, एक नहीं पता. So somewhere from common sense you can write कि अच्छा ठीक है, reinventing किस लिए होगा, right? Now what is he referring to? He refers to two countries, US and India, and he believes they are the big democracies. Big in what sense? Both geographical, demographic. Population भी बहुत ज़्यादा है, इंडिया की तो technically, और US का कहीं ना कहीं geographical spread बहुत बड़ा है. And then he says that these big democracies, they will have big problems. The big problem refers to the diverse problems that they will witness. So his term, big democracy, is a reference to demographic profile, right? Data, statistics, geographical spread. Simple. So in his book, he has 1954-55, he has written this book, very popular. He now justifies this idea that public administration, जब democracy बहुत बड़ी होगी, ठीक है, ये कॉन्सेप्ट पेपर 1, 2 दोनों में यूज हो सकता है. The big democracy in India failed to achieve the goals of traditional planning, right? Planning Commission in India promoted or somewhere restricted the growth of big democracy and its ideals of development. जहां ये यूज होगा तो इसका सेंस अलग अलग हो सकता है, ठीक है. बट ही इज यूजिंग इन द रेफरेंस दैट देयर इज बिग सोसाइटीज एंड दे हैव वेरी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड प्रॉब्लम्स. दैट इज द सिंपल लॉजिक. तो इसे ये इतने चैलेंजेस हैं यहाँ पे that we use the term big democracy, right? So now in this book he has talked about this idea that as the role of governments will increase, the role of administration will increase, and administration will become monopolizer of all the activities. तो पॉल एपल बाई का जो ये कॉन्सेप्ट है और वॉल्डो का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है, दे आर सेम. एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव स्टेट. So Waldo talks about administration. Last year, 2022, a question was based on the same logic. People might say it is from administrative law. Yes, prima facie, on the face of it, the question seems to be of administrative law, but it is not. It is administrative law and nature of public administration. Both are interlinked.
So can you explain what is administrative state?
I'm coming to that. Yes. So, big democracy and the concept of administrative state. Whenever the society will require a provision of services for such a huge population that cannot be supported by private sector, that can only be supported by government. So when government will be involved in this multi or diverse activities, there will be increasing role of administration. So an administrative state is one which takes up the welfare activities, which has monopoly dominantly over these services, right? But obviously these functions will not be performed without any logic. So administrative state का concept क्या है? Where the administration is the central player in providing all the goods and services, but at the same time, the administration understands that how efficiently these services can be provided. So see, generally what we say, that when administration is providing services, it fails to deliver services, right? This is the idea. He's saying, no. This administration will be reforming itself, and it will be improving itself, and it will be providing these services to the people. One aspect is that ये स्टेट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन एफिशिएंट है. दूसरा एस्पेक्ट दैट सो इट इज एफिशिएंट एंड इट प्रोवाइड्स वेलफेयर फंक्शंस. What is the second aspect? When the state provides so many services, then it becomes powerful. Are you? The administrative state is also a reference where administration exercises immense authority, but not in a negative sense. Negative bhi ho sakta hai. See, we cannot rule out. But Waldo says that majority of the functions are performed by administration, and it exercises extensive authority, huge authority. So obviously everything से कर सकते, but Leviathan एक थोड़ा ट्रेडिशनल कॉन्सेप्ट है. एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव स्टेट एक मॉडर्न कॉन्सेप्ट है कि if we are increasing the role of the administration, it is for the greater good of the society. Leviathan का कॉन्सेप्ट है कि भाई स्टेट जो है वो प्राइमरली पावर सीकर है, राइट? इट मोनोपोलाइजेस, सेंट्रलाइजेस पावर इनटू इटसेल्फ. तो वो थोड़ा नेगेटिव व्यू में नहीं, बट आपने नेगेटिव पर्सपेक्टिव से इसको ट्रीट किया ना, इसको पॉजिटिव पर्सपेक्टिव से आपने ट्रीट किया कि एक्सपैंडिंग रोल ऑफ एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन इज नॉट बैड फॉर सोसाइटी. Leviathan says expanding role of administration is basically bad for the society. It is restricting the individual liberty and freedom. So this is a positive view, administrative state.
तो उसको like scope में हम include कर सकते हैं.
हाँ बिल्कुल, but nature.
Nature की multiple policy implementation, administrative adjudication,
everywhere,
policy formation,
everywhere, and it is not wrong for the society. Fine, but we should not agree totally. Bhai. It is an instrument performing function, having authority. But the moment you give authority, and you think of countries like India, you use this logic in non-Western context. So if the role of administration is increasing in the context of India, then ultimately because people are poor, illiterate, and they do not have that, urge to seek accountability and answers from the government, what will happen? They will become very powerful. So developing countries में यही institution बन जाता है.
This is opposite to that rollback of state.
You can say yes, obviously it is definitely. Fine. But see, rollback of state is also based on the same idea that traditional government is a failure. Same logic. Fine. But from what perspective are they viewing the government? Economic perspective. So rollback, neoliberal, public choice, majority of them, except public choice to an extent, but NPM, neoliberal movement, all of them are based on the belief that government is an inefficient system. Not correct. Economically, it may be inefficient, right? But socially, ethically, morally,
So basically, you can give the COVID example.
right? Inclusion-wise, better. But Tata cannot provide, even if it follows the CSR, but Tata may not be held, or Tata may not take the responsibility of educating children for free. It is the state which can do it, right? So try to understand. If we're expanding the role of education, state in education, health, basic infrastructure, human development, acha. If we're expanding the role of state in commercial function, bura hai. It cannot be that competitive. It cannot be that efficient, right? So when you say rollback of state, you are viewing it only from economic perspective. The overall perspective.
Government should not do the something where it is not good.
Not do that.
We should do the regulatory thing. So administrative statement authority on regulation there.
ये देखो सर्विसेज भी प्रोवाइड करेगा, राइट? और द पर्पस जो है सर्विसेज को प्रोवाइड करने का वो यहाँ पे बहुत डिस्टिंक्ट है, राइट? आप you can provide the same transport services to the rich, right? And state can charge money. A lot of examples are there. The railways में जो special trains चलती हैं, luxury trains, they are charging 7 lakh, 10 lakh rupees for 14 days, 15 days, 1 month, whatever that, right? Obviously, anybody can claim the government is running a train, right, and charging such a hefty amount. What does it mean? The government can also perform certain commercial functions, but it will have a very specified clientele. That will not be a welfare function. So don't think government as a welfarist institution. It may perform welfare functions, but it may not be a welfarist institution. ये public choice का model है, right? But can anyone else perform welfare better than government? ये question है भाई, कौन perform कर सकता है? So you have an alternative to commercial functions, but do you have alternative for welfare functions? You don't have.
So civil society.
NGO, civil society, but see, NGO, civil society ना resourceful है, right? Na authoritative hai, right? Neither they are that organized as the government, nor they have a rational system as the government. So even if you evaluate the role of government on these basic parameters, it is found to be better than the others, right? That is what they are referring to, right? So if you see, big democracy was an example for institution versus instrument. ये भी एक view है. Weber, बहुत सारे scholars they have talked about, but let's see. So non-Western tradition may welfare, justice, equality, right? Now, when you think of developing countries like India or Indian context, subcontinent, most of the questions are with reference to the role, moral and ethical role of the government. हम कहीं भी state के और functions को highlight नहीं करते हैं. We generally view the state from that moral framework. Why do we do that? Why should we start treating the state like that? The state is responsible for everything that is happening in our life. CSAT हटाओ. What will government do about it? Constitutional body है, it is conducting the exam. Right? Likewise, we can start questioning everything in this country. Obviously, electoral process, election commission got out, right? Karnataka, it was quite visible that in spite of election commissions favoring a particular political party, still the party lost the election. और अभी से election commission 2 years से its biasness is visible in many aspects. So, अभी obviously राहुल गांधी की को डिस्क्वालीफाई कर दिया गया कि क्या वो बहुत जल्दी हो गया, इतनी जल्दी सब कुछ हो गया, right? Generally इतने केसेस में इतनी जल्दी कुछ होता नहीं, and that too when the person is the leader technically of the opposition. So it is, if you start questioning every institution, there is a problem. तो अब UPSC को सिर्फ इसलिए, तो UPSC is not performing a welfare function. Competition is not welfare, right? It must be using certain principles of welfare. So positive discrimination, take a welfare, right? But that welfare is not subsidy. That welfare is not freebie, right? That welfare is only institutional support, right? In the form of lowering the benchmark, nothing else. Competition तो वहाँ भी होगा, पढ़ना तो पड़ेगा ही, आपको एग्जाम देना ही पड़ेगा सी. तो मेरिट और स्टेट्स प्रोटेक्शन दोनों को हमने बैलेंस किया. So see, logic is, in non-Western tradition, we always portray the government as moralist, idealist, the one who is the protector, preserver of the citizens, one who is performing all the functions for the citizens. That is something not acceptable. लेकिन हम हमेशा करते हैं. तो non-Western tradition में जो provide पढ़ते हैं हम उसको, we view it from more subjective aspect. Right? Equality law, anti-poverty programs, poverty alleviation programs, rural development programs, women development programs. मतलब स्टेट है तो वो यही कर रहा होगा बस, राइट? सो सी, वेयर इज वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड में ऐसा नहीं था. सी, वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज द स्टेट वाज डोमिनेटली प्लेइंग कमर्शियल फंक्शन आल्सो and it was accepted by the people. See, so many questions are designed around this idea, right? If we simplify these two contexts, Western and non-Western, then एक और dimension emerge होता है, public versus private. Now, nature of PubAd, right? So, what is the nature of PubAd? So, questions have been asked that publicness is the essential trait of public administration. Okay? Publicness. बहुत क्वेश्चंस आते हैं इसके अराउंड भी, राइट? इट इज द पब्लिकनेस ऑफ पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन that makes it distinct from private administration. What is this publicness? Example?
For example, health, PHC in Indian context.
ठीक है, और कोई एग्जांपल? RTI है प्राइवेट सेक्टर में, क्यों? But private sector, when its role is increasing, right? When you have majority of the infrastructure projects in the private sector, when you are following the on-witty model now, hybrid model basically, यानी private sector को बहुत autonomy दे रहे हो, right? Then majority of जो investments आ रहे हैं state governments में भी, वो private vendors के through आ रहे हैं, private route के through आ रहे हैं, ठीक है? Center जो है states को पैसा देने से धीरे धीरे पीछे हट रहा है, FRBM, right? फिस्कल फेडरलिज्म का पूरा डेफिनेशन चेंज हो गया. फाइनेंस कमीशन चाहता है कि भाई मोर एंड मोर ऑटोनॉमी शुड बी विद द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स, राइट? एंड सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट शुड नॉट हैव डोमिनेशन ओवर दिस ट्रांसफर ऑफ मनी. नो नीड ऑफ सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट इन कंट्रोलिंग दिस distribution of resource between union and state. It is giving more role to the local government, local planning, rural development. So we are moving towards this model. ठीक है, अभी आपने बोला. So private sector will now play a very effective role at local government level. Already जो है सेकेंड आरसी ने बहुत सारे रिकमेंडेशन दिए थे, नीति आयोग ने भी उसको सपोर्ट कर लिया कि लोकल गवर्नमेंट क्या करना चाहिए. भाई लोकल गवर्नमेंट मस्ट परफॉर्म सर्टेन कमर्शियल फंक्शंस, like it can provide services of the state and the union government and can collect a user fee on that behalf. Electoral bond, municipal bonds float karo, Ahmedabad, Lucknow, already बहुत सारे states में it is visible that it is success. So they can float bonds now, like urban bodies, rural bodies will also do that, right? There will be private financial institutions supporting them, right? So they will multiply, they may create investment bonds, green bonds. कल को rural bodies promote करने लगे कि हाँ भाई ठीक है, हम green bonds promote कर रहे हैं, eco bonds promote कर रहे हैं. This is the day. This is happening in many Western countries, right? So it is possible that majority of the revenue or source of development funding will come from the private sector. तो publicness क्या हुआ फिर? So this raises a question: can publicness be an attribute of the private sector? A private sector health में बहुत सारे काम कर रही है, CSR initiatives ले रही है. Private sector is performing or helping the government build a lot of infrastructure. Discoms, hydel projects, बहुत सारा काम कर रही है.
So, but basically, private organizations are charging more than the production level.
See, it is because the government is giving unnecessary subsidy.
Yes,
So public-private, so works for economics.
Now, see, you're not getting my point. What I'm trying to tell you, you are looking at public and private as two set of organizations. I am talking about nature of public administration. Is this becoming like this? Is this becoming like this? ये है question.
More or less, yes. The line is blurry.
ठीक है, that is the logic which we are talking about. कि अगर private sector public type activities perform कर रहा है, even if it does not fall under the definition of Article 12, it's okay. But it is performing public type activities. Can we say it has publicness? क्यों नहीं? भाई टाटा अगर कैंसर रिसर्च चला रहा है और बहुत सब्सिडाइज कॉस्ट पे हेल्थ केयर दे रहा है, तो क्या ये उसकी पब्लिकनेस नहीं है? राइट, दैट इज, वी आर कमिंग टू दैट लॉजिक. सो a lot of questions come on this aspect also, right? The nature of public administration versus the nature of private administration. So traditionally when we study it, we treat them separately from each other.
Fast track your UPSC prep with ProdEgyIAS. Join our public administration crash course under the expert guidance of Ashutosh Pandey, renowned for his mastery in public administration, starting 7 July 2025. Sharpen your concepts and boost your score. Enroll now at ProdEgy IAS.